broke the radius in this direction. I have an avulsion on the ulna, and it looks like I might have some other dislocation behind the thumb. So I will see.
If you hadn't noticed, while I was trying to take my gloves off, you can see that the front of the KTM is a little bashed up. My meter's sticking in the wrong direction. I don't have a front brake lever. And the reason I was having difficulty getting my gloves off is what I'll go into. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this video. I apologize for the sound and the light, but I need to go to the emergency room. So I think I've broken my left wrist as a result of what happened here. I'm interested to see how the KTM ended up like that, and how I think I have a broken wrist. Tonight has been very challenging. I had a crash at around 6 p.m. and it was really cold where I was, and I couldn't stay there because I knew with my wrist hurting the way it did, there's no way I could have put up a tent or got in a sleeping bag, and anything I took off of the bike I would not have been able to get back on. My left hand is almost not functional. The only way I was able to pull in the clutch is just by kind of making a hook with my hands and reaching around the lever and pulling it in. I can't grab and pull anything in. I'm shivering right now because the temperatures were in the 30s and 40s on the way home, but I had to ride home at night. I knew there was no choice with where I was. There was nobody else out there. I had to get back. So thankfully I'm able to shift without a clutch, and I still had a back brake even though I didn't have a front brake, and spent 3.5 hours riding back, which was about 180 miles. 25 miles of riding off-road one-handed. I just rested my wrist on the tank bag and throttled and was able to get back. So there are some lessons to be learned from this, so stick around if you want to get the full details of what happened.
All right, I want to give you a brief update of everything, and I am not in a cool filming location. Unfortunately, there's going to be some road noise behind me. This is as good as I can do given the circumstances. As you can see, I do have a brace, a splint on. I broke the radius in this direction. I have an avulsion on the ulna, and it looks like I might have some other dislocation behind the thumb. So I will see a specialist tomorrow. It's been 2 days, so not great news, but I was pretty much expecting that. So I wanted to walk through basically what happened to the best description I can give, and then I'll go through what's happened to the bike and then give you updates as I learn more about what happens here. All right, Saturday, February 26th, I was riding in Death Valley, northern parts of Death Valley. I had wrapped up around Ubehebe Crater over to Tea Kettle Junction, got some cool video footage at Tea Kettle Junction, and then took off on Hunter Canyon Road. And I wasn't sure if I was gonna be able to get through because that gets to pretty high elevations. And I had some pretty cool riding in there. I went through some snow, some ice, some mud, some pretty cool and pushing the limits types of riding. But I was able to get through that. It wasn't anything I was overly concerned about. I always thought that if anything became too much, if I was concerned about getting through it, I could turn around and go back because I just came from that direction. And I was able to get all the way through and get to Saline Valley Road, which seems to be my Bermuda Triangle area. By the time I got to Saline Valley Road, it was about 5 o'clock. Sun was setting. I needed to find a camping spot. There were a few camping spots along there that I could have gone to, but because it was about 44 degrees when I got to that point, I knew it was going to get quite cold at night. And I thought, well, I'll go back to the cabin that I stayed in April, because I remember it had a fireplace in it, or a wood burning stove. And I thought if I get the wood burning stove going, if there's wood in it, then I would be a lot warmer. So that was my objective. I took the little Jeep trail that goes off of that road, and it's not in great shape. It's rocky, it's rutted, it goes up and down through the valley there, getting up to the mountain. But for me, it was riding at about 40% of my capability, nothing extreme. I was not riding fast. And I had noticed up ahead that a Joshua tree had fallen over, and part of it looked like it was like right at the edge of the trail. So it looked to me that I had clearance, and as I was weaving in between the rocks and getting my way going, that Joshua tree, like this much of it stuck out in the trail, and it snagged my crash bar on the left side. And when it did that, it pulled me to, it basically pulled the handlebars to the left, dropped the bike, and I went sailing over the windscreen. I did a somersault and stood up, and I immediately knew something was wrong with my wrist. Now my best guess is when the bike came to kind of that abrupt turning stop, as it forced the handlebars to the left, which jammed my wrist. And I was standing, but I believe it jammed my wrist when that happened. And then at that point I was also going over, so the part of my body flying over the windscreen and the handlebars getting jammed is what caused the damage to my left wrist. So at that point, bike is down. I know I have a problem. I have some decisions to make. I knew by looking at the bike and the way I felt that staying probably was not an option, because my left hand had basically become non-functional. I had basically two options: ride to a town and call and have someone come pick me up, which meant I'd have to leave my bike there, which I didn't like that idea. Or what I did was ride home 3.5 hours in the dark in 30 and 40 degree temperatures. My thought process was it would be faster for me to ride home than to wait for someone to ride or drive 3 hours to get me and another 3 hours to get back in order to go to the hospital. So I was trying to cut that time in half, and I really did not want to leave my bike somewhere at one of these gas stations or anywhere else. So that's what I decided to do, was ride home. Now you might be wondering how I was able to do that. The next thing I had to do is I had to get this bike picked up, and with this hand not working anymore, I had to pull the handlebar in basically with one hand, lock my arm out and lean into the bike and get it lifted up. Now I had to kind of wiggle it down to get it in kind of a little bit of a rut in the road, but when leaning into it, I got it up. So that was a key thing. And as I was riding out, there were a couple other things that came to my mind that I had to make sure that I could do. And one was getting gas. So this is normally my gas pumping hand, and you might think, well, just pump with the other, but there's a problem here in California, is that California pumps have this vent line, and the gas won't pump into your bike unless that vent line is pulled back and engaged. So on motorcycles, at least this has been my experience, I have to take one hand and pull that vent line back until it engages and then pump with the other hand. So normally I pull that vent back with my right hand. Well, I wasn't going to be able to do that. So what I ended up doing was taking my two index and middle finger and just setting those over the hole of the gas fill area, and sliding the gas tank fill, and then pushing that, basically pinching my fingers in so it would pull that vent valve up to engage in order to gas up. So that was one of the biggest issues that I was going to have. When I got to that first gas station in Olancha, I had the idea in my head that if I was unable to get gas, then I'd have to call someone and just hang out for hours waiting to get picked up. But if I could get gas, it gave me hope on getting home. The other thing I thought is I could not take my glove off of my left hand, because once I took it off, I knew I wouldn't be able to get it back on. And then I also knew that I couldn't take my helmet off, because if I took my helmet off, I knew I also would not be able to get that back on one-handed and strapping things. Now, I did have to take my glove off my right hand, which I had to do by biting the fingers and pulling it off. The problem was getting my glove back on once I was at that gas station. So what I ended up doing was I had a glove liner and then the glove itself. So I got the liner on and I was able to wiggle the liner in over the fingers by going across my handlebars and just kind of moving it through. But for the bigger glove, what I ended up doing is Velcroing it to the top of my tank bag, where I have some Velcro here. And the Velcro there is when I stop, I can just throw my gloves on there. So I Velcroed it in there so it'd hold the glove, and then I was just kind of sliding my hand in and pulling and tugging and putting elbow pressure to keep the Velcro from coming off, but just wiggling it until I got it close enough that I could jam my fingers over the handlebars, over the grips, to get it fit. That took a little while, and that was a challenge as well. So I had two significant issues: putting gas in the bike and getting a glove back on. And at that time, I was freezing, because it had to be in the 30s. Or no, when I got to the gas station, it was 44 degrees. So I took my hydration pack off and put on my raincoat, which that was a challenge because I can't even use this hand. So I got the raincoat over, but to do the zipper, I had to be very, very gentle, basically using my thumb to kind of work it up to get it started, and then got it zipped up. And then putting a hydration pack on again was another challenge. So, but once I got that done, got back on the road, I knew I had enough gas to get home. I would not have to stop again. It was just doing everything I could to get home. A couple of things is, I mentioned earlier I was not able to pull the clutch in normally. I had to basically make this little monkey grip and then pull the clutch in. And I think for the 180-mile ride that I had to do, I only had to pull the clutch in about 8 times, which as the evening wore on, it became more and more distressful to do that. Additionally, I was in an off-road area. I had to ride out of that off-road area, which was about 20 miles to the next paved road, and a couple of miles of some pretty rough stuff. I basically rested my arm right here for that entire ride home, and then if I needed to reach the clutch, it would be just very gingerly reach over and pull it. There were times where I needed to turn my high beams on and off, so I did have enough dexterity to be able to do that. I think a lot of the times I just flicked it with my thumb, but that was about all the functionality I had out of my left hand riding home for that period of time. That included riding through Kern Canyon. There was one time that I did have to pull over and get off because of the traffic coming up behind me. I did what I had to do. But I knew it was important to get home so that I could get to the hospital sooner and not be stranded somewhere else. So some of you may not agree with the decision that I made coming back the way I did, but at the time I didn't really think that I had any other option, and it was the most time efficient, and again, the best way to ensure that my bike was going to be safe. There's some anecdotal stories of bikes disappearing out in that valley that have been left when they've been broken down. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but it wasn't worth the risk to me to leave my bike there, even at a gas station overnight or anything else like that. It just wasn't gonna be possible. And I also knew once the cast went on, it would be a lot more difficult for me to ride my bike home or find another way to get it home. So that's what I did. All right, let's go through and we'll go and I'll point out all of the problems on the bike now. All right, most obvious issue is the windscreen is broken in half. The bracket is bent backwards and it's not actually attached here. It's loose. So this whole system's gonna have to be replaced. I'm probably gonna do something different than the GV. It's all that was available when I got the bike. There's some other options out there that I may try. If anyone's curious about how the crash bars hold up, I've got some scratches here, and even these little crash bar bags held up pretty well. They didn't get ripped off or anything, but it does have a hole here that got ripped in it. So from that standpoint, it's okay. The front brake lever was snapped off way in there. So I'd been holding off getting hand guards. I think once I get these replaced, that'll be one of the things that I do, is get some hand guards on there to protect all that. And the handlebars are bent slightly back. So I'll do a big bar upgrade. And then of course, this mirror mount is, it's not, I don't know, I think it's stripped. I think all the threads got stripped out. So I'll have to get that fixed. I've got some different ideas of what I can do there. So other than that, I don't think there are any other things. So this here is the one spot where it grabbed me. And I just a crazy thing. It was, you know, just sticking out a couple inches further than I thought, and it ripped me down and hurt me bad. There are some lessons to be learned here, and one is I should have put the hand guards on. I had been holding off because I wanted to do a big bar upgrade, but had I had hand guards on, I wouldn't have lost the front brake lever. It wouldn't have snapped off. Now my handlebars might have been a little bit more bent, but at least I'd still have controls. I don't ride with emergency GPS beacon. I think had this crash been different and maybe I hurt my right hand instead of my left, I might not have been able to use the throttle, which would have required me to walk out several miles to get help. The nearest busy dirt road was maybe 2 miles away, so it wasn't a long way, but it is a fair distance. And had it been a leg injury and I couldn't walk, then that would have been a little bit more challenging to try to get help. There wasn't, even though Death Valley was busy, there wasn't a lot of people that I saw in that area, but there was a lot going up and down Saline Valley Road. So when I do return to the west, and there's some updates coming to the channel, I will definitely be getting a GPS emergency beacon. If I had had one, I doubt I would have used it in this circumstance. I would have, you know, I was able to lift the bike and ride out, and that to me does not necessitate using it. Now, had this been a bigger, heavier adventure bike, I never would have gotten it up. I think if it had even been a middleweight bike, I don't think I would have been able to get it up by myself one-handed. But being a lightweight, smaller adventure bike, I was able to do it. It wasn't that challenging. You know, I didn't struggle for a long time. It was basically once I figured out where to put my one hand and get the bar turned in and lean into it, it came up. So yeah, there are definitely some lessons there.
I need to wrap up this video. As you can see, I am in a cast. This week has been pretty challenging. Pain levels have been fairly high. Getting the cast set was not a fun thing. And I haven't been able to get out and do any more filming. And I haven't even unloaded my bike since getting back on Saturday night, and it is Friday. I have been able to at least get the brake lever fixed, the mirror is fixed, it wasn't stripped, I just needed to tighten it up. The windscreen has been removed. I'm going to put the stock one back on just so that I have something on there to start riding again. The other thing to keep in mind is this accident occurred on a motorcycle, but it's not because of motorcycles. If you are an active person, things will happen. I ride a mountain bike all the time, as many of you know. I crash on that a fair amount. I've had some pretty severe crashes on my mountain bike. I have ridden over 40,000 miles in the last 3 years on motorcycles, and this is the first major incident that I've had of this significance. If you are an active person, things will happen. The fresh brake technician that put my cast on 3 months prior was hiking, tripped, broke her wrist in a very similar manner to what I did. So don't be turned off of motorcycles because of potential accidents. If you're active, things are going to happen. You're probably going to break something. The chances of getting hurt are much higher. So I don't want anyone to focus on it being a motorcycle accident. This is something from being active. It was a freak thing that happened. So if you've had freak things that happened that caused you injury, leave that in the comments below. I'd like to see what those are. And Thanks for watching. Get out, do some riding, ride safe, and I will see you out there.